Welcome everyone to episode 7 of our tutorial series on Advanced Tactics Gold. In this episode we're going to cover Airpower, but I'm also going to cover a little bit about artillery, just because it's the same mechanic. It's really the same mechanic as attack as well. So in the south, we're playing now as the Russians, of course, continuing from the last video. Also, I apologize if my fan in the background is a little bit noisy, but it's quite hot here. So what we see is this little jutting out. That's usually a perfect opportunity for us to have some kind of counterattack. We could even get up to 4 sides of surroundment on this unit. Unfortunately, I don't think we can move and attack here, and no other unit is going to be able to get there and attack. So we probably need to figure out what we're going to be doing. This 27 unit is going to be a weak link in our armor. A weak chain. So we want to position them a little bit away from the enemy forces. So what we're going to do is this. We're actually going to move this unit here, move this one to Rostov as a defensive measure, and then this one can come and kind of plug the line. And what we're starting to get now is a consecutive line running north to south. When you're the defending side, it's much better to have a consecutive line without little kinks. So this is like a kink, see? And the disadvantage of that is that an enemy can get multiple sides of surroundment on you, which increases the attack stack they're allowed to attack you with, but it also allows them to increase their concentric bonus just by attacking you from more of your flank. Those are bad things if you're defending, so that's why the best defense is kind of a straight line. Okay, so then what forces shall we actually attack with? I think this one can get here. We can create a new rifleman unit with so the riflemen and machine guns here. So we'll just be doing kind of the same thing we've been doing for a while. I'm going to get 40 riflemen, and let me just make sure that the machine guns are actually at 100. That's fantastic. So we'll transfer 10 machine guns in as well. I like to make my attack stacks of 50. It's a really easy number to work with on bigger engagements all along the front. In my multiplayer series with against obviously a more intelligent opponent, sometimes you want to break up the sizes into smaller amounts so that you can get, remember, sometimes the best attack ball is slightly over the attack stack. So if having these units at 50 is, it's perfect in terms of this unit has a perfect attack stack of 50, 2 50s would make 100, which would be exactly at my limit, or 3 50s would make exactly 150 if I'm attacking from 3 sides. However, sometimes it's better to attack with a little bit more than that. In those situations, if you only have stacks of 50, the next best thing you can do is attack with 200 out of 150, or even worse, 150 out of 100. That's really bad, so sometimes the smaller units are going to be better. Take that with a grain of salt, of course, because every extra division you make, the smaller, more fine-grained your army is, the more political points it costs to create it, because every division card is 1 political point. So you can think of, the first line of tech, which we'll cover a little bit in this turn, the first line of tech is 40 political points if you play with the normal stats. So what that means is 40 divisions is 1 tech you didn't have. Okay, so we want to attack with this group, but we want to actually bombard with our artillery here. So the same way we're going to do an attack, we're going to do an artillery barrage. Select, attack, and these are only 2 groups which had a initial action points of 77, I think. So that means every attack round is 10 action points, so we were able to get 7, and we'll have 7 action points left over, which we can't do anything with, but that's just, they're going to be left over. We did surprisingly well. I would not have expected much of a change, but we actually killed a mortar, which is really, really fortuitous, and also caused several of their units to retreat, which means that is going to cause lower readiness. Retreating just means that they pulled out of combat because of, for whatever reason, they retreated out of the artillery bombardment. They didn't feel like they could stand the attack, so it usually means that their readiness has been greatly diminished. Now what happens here is our artillery is now down to 7, which means our action points is down to 7. But now that we've completed our artillery bombardment, we can create a new division and transfer them out. They will suffer the readiness penalty, but since they've already done their bombardment for the turn, that's not going to be so bad. And now this HQ is actually able to move, and it has 99 action points once again. So that's a nice trick that you can use to get the most out of your units that are stacked in your headquarters. You don't have to transfer them out first, you can transfer them out after they've completed their turn, basically. So let's also go ahead and create, because this turn is supposed to be about air power, we're going to create 2 new formations out of our Moscow headquarters, the Supreme headquarters. And actually I want one to be part of this group and one to be part of our northern group. So we're going to send our dive bomber down here. Although it's nice to send your dive bomber to the place where you're going to attack, the dive bomber is really effective against armor units, so it's better to send them where the armor is. So for our green unit, that's the dive bomber, we'll send them over here. Looks like we're going to have to move them to Kiev. This would not be a great idea if we were playing seriously, because if Kiev falls and we still have this dive bomber unit in there, it will be destroyed. Now it took 35 action points, we're down to 65, but that still actually leads us 6 rounds of bombardment that we can do. So in the same way we did our artillery barrage, we're going to do our dive bombing run. However, I don't think it's a good idea, even though we're planning on attacking this unit. I should showcase that the dive bombers are significantly better against armor. You can see an attack of 900 compared to infantry, which is 150. Now that's not bad, it's usually enough to kill the infantry. You will kill some of them, but for the production point cost of an armor, it's much more effective to kill those instead. So we're going to dive bomb this unit. Airstrike, click, click, and attack. And now we have 6 rounds because we had 65 action points. We were able to kill 2 tanks, which is excellent. Probably a lot better than we would have gotten done if we had tried to dive bomb this unit. The one disadvantage of not dive bombing this unit is now that we're going to attack and we're going to use our tank in the attack, dive bombers, as you can see in this combat thing, the numbers here is the prioritization. So this means that it's not a guarantee that they're going to attack armor first, but they have a higher chance of engaging first non-fighters, then soft mobile, artillery, and our armor are all number 2, so they are equally likely. And that artillery means that if we had attacked this other group, they probably would have eliminated this AT gun. But it also explains why we didn't really kill many of the riflemen, I think maybe 3 of them, but we did kill 2 of the light tanks. Because, I mean, even though there's 24 units here total, we prioritized 4 out of more than we prioritized the 20. And that's what the priority on that combat description is trying to indicate. And it makes sense that dive bombers are going to go after bigger targets. Okay, so now we're set. We've done our artillery bombardment, and we're moving our forces into position. Even though they still have an AT gun, I think it's going to be better for us to attack with our light tanks, so we will do it this way. 1, 2, 3, and that puts us at 154. I'm actually going to commit 1 more unit, because I think the extra units in this case are going to be worth it. It'll also kind of protect our tanks, because I think the way the combat works is these units will select a unit at random. Well, I mean with the prioritization factored in as well, but it's a random toss of the dice with your after you've factored in that prioritization. So having more units means that there's a better chance the enemy won't engage your priority units. This is also why you tend to, I'll go into unit design more later, but a group of just 30 machine guns or 50 machine guns is worse than having like 40 riflemen and 10 machine guns, because the machine guns are still going to do a lot of work, but the riflemen can act as a buffer, and your machine guns are pretty expensive units, so it's nice to have them buffered by a lot of riflemen. So we're going to be a bit over the attack stack, but this is just another situation where you can see it's kind of an advantage to use not just stacks of 50, because then you can get something like 180 or something. But I think this should be a successful attack, because we did weaken them ever so slightly with our artillery barrage, and we are also getting pretty good surrounding. Okay, so this was good. We inflicted a lot of casualties, including, and importantly, their AT gun. And also, equally important, we didn't lose any tanks ourselves. We just lost some general infantry. 7 rifle, 2 machine gun, they lost 13, 1, 3. The AT guns and the 3 horses are pretty potent. But mortars themselves cost 500 to build, so those are pretty significant to lose as well. On top of that, as we've seen in the past, if you are able to displace a defending unit, it needs a lot of time to recover. So the readiness is down to 22, which is really low. Our attackers are doing still pretty much okay, with an average readiness of 79. Now we want to occupy that hex. We'll move in these 2, and now we have a pretty solid front. It would be nice to be able to defend here, so let's move this unit to kind of protect Keep's flank. And let's get this unit to protect even further north, although it doesn't look like they're encroaching through the swamp, because if they were, even if we can't see the units, the front would move. We would see our front being pushed back. We'll also transfer 4 rifles to the north. And note that you don't lose action points or readiness when you're transferring air units. They are the exception to the rule that transferring is bad. So we can move them kind of freely without suffering readiness penalties. Let's move this one to this airbase in the middle. That'll allow them to cover both the north and the south, but we'll also get them probably to attack on this turn to kind of weaken up one of these units that we're planning to attack with our tanks. So we can do an airstrike on this unit. It should get 8 rounds, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What I should show you is, if we do this air recon mission, we could select any hex, and then any hex that we choose, we can get really detailed scouting information, reconnaissance on that hex. It also trickles out to the surrounding hexes, so if I was able to do a recon mission here, I would probably still capture all the units, have a very good idea of what is inside Kolberg, even though it's not exactly the hex. So it's not like you have to get one hex dead on. The same way that we see our reconnaissance here is 127, and this one's 30, and then this one's 5. That same kind of trickle-down mechanic will happen when you scout over at Kolberg. But I think it'll be more effective for us this turn to actually engage one of the units that we want to attack. Now we have this tank unit, which can attack here. And if we create a new formation and get that part of the same headquarters, we can transfer the 4 light tanks we have here. Even though the technically the combat effectiveness of this is only 67, we're fighting a unit which only has 1 anti-tank thing, so probably this 67 weighted against what we're attacking is still better than the 71 or even the 73 that we also have available with infantry. So what we're going to do is move this 73 forward to attack. Then we can move both of these tanks here and attack as well. So we'll do a little bit over the attack stack, but wait, first of all, let's do that airstrike I was talking about. Okay, so we click that one, we select airstrike, we select our fighters. The best thing that we can hope for is to get rid of that AT gun, but even if we can just inflict some casualties, any little bit helps. So we were able to get 8 rounds off, that's good. Lowered their readiness just by a pinch, and very little done to their entrenchment. It's not really fighters' strong point. I mean, we can see that they're still decent against infantry, but not amazing. And with only attacking with 4 of them, you're not going to do very much. They're much better suited to anti-aircraft. I mean, that's their main role. So we'll just wait for the Germans to produce some aircraft, which I think is happening, and should be ready by our next turn. Alright, so now let's just follow up that really pathetic attack with hopefully something more successful. We're not getting much of a concentric bonus, and we have pretty sizable over the attack stack, but I still think this is the best combination of forces, because it's going to leave these 2 free. They haven't spent a single action point, and they're staying in that same hex. So it'll leave them to possibly exploit the advantage, maybe push forward hard. We'll have to see how the attack goes. Well, this is pretty poor. What we see is, because of their high entrenchment, they actually killed 2 of our tanks. and on top of that, our attack was not successful. This was a bit of a surprising result to me because all of their infantry, the mortars, the machine guns, and the rifles should just be totally nothing but fodder for our tank units. What we see, however, is the anti-tank gun managed to hold up against both of them. I do several takes for these videos, and I can tell you that in the first take I did for this episode 7, the same group overwhelmed this force and knocked them back, although it was pretty even in terms of losses. So just to give you an idea of what is an adequate force for attacking and what is an adequate force for defending. So you can see here that although we probably should have defeated this unit, if you look at the individual units involved and compare them, this game very heavily weights defense, and that's just something I have to stress because here it is, biting us in the ankle once more. Well, I see that we are losing not too many raws, so let's go to our production overview. We're going to switch the trains up for perhaps some political points. And let's also get... do we need anything else? Now we're doing okay, but let's switch out the machine guns that we're producing here for more infantry, just because that 16 raws that we're losing, we might actually need them. So let's go 0 and 100, which will give us a lot more riflemen. And I'm not really paying attention, but just if you were playing this seriously, you should definitely be upgrading the staff. We're only at 52% there, and over here we're at 37%, which is pretty abysmal. So we should be producing staff, really, instead of riflemen, and getting these percentages up higher. However, I think the concept we already covered, so I'm going to, instead of wasting that time, we're going to just push forward, and let's push on to the next turn. Yes. Okay, so now we see, well, we actually inflicted pretty good losses against the Russians, despite losing 2 armor ourselves, but this was from dive bombing, which we would expect. And now we should have, it's funny that this headquarters is in a suburban hex, which doesn't have any kind of airfield, but because we demanded that they produce and send to this HQ can actually support the 4 fighters. Now, I don't want to mess with that. I don't want to see what happens if they stay there. Let's see, we want these guys to go down here, I think. So I'm just going to immediately move them out. Okay. So they're at 100, 100. We move them over to this airfield, and now we're going to put them on intercept. I'm going to say attempt to intercept fighters as long as you have 50 readiness or more. You can also just set them to never intercept, which is probably what you'll set your dive bombers and your tactical level bombers to. Anti-supply, this is like if you want them to engage in anti-supply warfare. I'm going to select no for the fighters because essentially I want them to be very committed to attacking any of the dive bombers that move in. Now technically this is not close enough to protect our units on the front, but we can just kind of force, we should, if we wanted, to build an air base closer, but we can just next turn really mess up with the dive bombers to get to see what happens when air intercepts. Okay, we also wanted to do a factory with this group, but they don't have the engineering points yet, so we can see build. We could try to get a tank factory. Unfortunately, we're short by 20 engineering points. They'll get another 40 because they get 2 per engineer per turn. So we'll get another 40 next turn, and that'll give us enough engineering points to build a factory and even build 1 more road. Okay, this unit is going to move down here, and to move this from a level 2, which it currently is, to a level 3, actually requires 160 engineering points. So this unit is going to be waiting for 2 more turns before it has the engineering points to upgrade our RAWs. So we'll just take it easy on those. Okay, so we put our interceptors in position. Let's just, although it's not really serious, let's also continue to move our units forward. In the south, we know we have superiority and we are pushing on them, but now the Russians have set up a pretty good front, so it's going to be harder to push back. I think we have the ability to attack this unit. which will put pressure on Kyiv. So we'll move something like this. I think, yeah, we can move here. So we'll get this 85 to bump up like this, the 79 there, and then this unit, we'll have them keep on the road. This was an opportunity, probably would have been better spent if I moved it here and then moved it here on after that, because we would have had better information that this unit was there first. So you can see that if this was like a forest, or let's just pretend it was a high mountain, if I had attempted to walk into this hex and this unit was actually here, I would have been ambushed. But this is open plains, the fields, same thing for hide points. So there's not going to be any real chance of them surprising us. Okay. Well, we have a few units in Kolberg. Let me just quickly jump out with some riflemen. Let's actually make it 42 and 8, which I think is a really good unit composition. If you're up against infantry, at least. Whoops. No, yeah, we did get it. So if you're up against infantry, this is really good. We'll move this into the forest, which will mean it's better against armor as well, because armor will take a 50% penalty attacking it. Remember that, like tanks in landscape, only attack at 50% into the forest. They'd probably still overrun this unit because it just doesn't have very much anti-tank going on for it. The machine guns are worse than your riflemen, but the riflemen themselves are still pretty poor. Okay. We have still enough to make one more division like that if we want. And you know what? Why not? We know that we weakened the tanks in this hex, so our defense is holding pretty well. The reason why you want such a high percentage of riflemen compared to machine guns, such a high ratio, is you select a target at random, like I was trying to talk about with prioritization. So you want to have enough buffer riflemen to protect your machine guns, the ones who are going to be doing most of the killing. And this is a pretty well defended front. Yeah, we need some more anti-tank, and really what we should be doing is producing dive bombers like our Russian counterparts are. But we stepped it up in terms of political points instead. So let's cut this down to half and let me get some dive bombers instead. Now we'll have next turn. Actually, let's get level bombers so I can try to showcase those. And let me see if I can get an even number. Yeah, 50 will give me 8, so that's perfect. Okay, very good. So we'll get 8 level bombers, which is quite a bit, quite a few. We're really hurting in terms of the raws. Let's see if there's any way we can cut that back. Well, let's just go ahead and eliminate the machine guns from this group and just go to pure riflemen. Actually, even better might be to go to 50 this and then 50 staff. Yeah, I mean, this isn't really serious. Like, we're not taking this very seriously. I'm just trying to reinforce concepts here, but that's probably a little bit better so that we can start to get the staff percentages up. They're really atrociously low. 71% isn't so bad, but I think this one is... Oh, this one's 107. I might be doing it right on the German side, but just getting it wrong with the Russians. Okay, so this guy's on intercept. I think everything's ready. We do want to actually do this attack first. We don't have anybody who can bombard here, sadly. So we're just going to attack immediately. And we only have these two available because none of these guys have the movement. Oh, wait, this unit does. Okay, so that surprises me. Then we will be able to do an attack. It's not the best, 141 attack stack, but very small concentric bonus. I suspect we'll defeat them because our tanks are better. That's what I said last time, but this is much more what I would expect. We lost a tank, but we did kill the AT gun, and we really, really bit into their forces. We can see we lost 10 and 1, and a machine gun, but they lost 24. The AT gun, machine guns, and mortars are really expensive too, so losing those is bad. On top of that, as I've already shown you before, the retreating unit is really in low readiness, which means it won't be effective. However, it would be kind of foolish for me to move in here. They would be able to counterattack from 4 sides. So what I'm going to do is just eliminate that unit and force them to move back in if they want to reoccupy. And I'm sure that they're intelligent enough that they would. Okay, we'll push on one more turn. And now we can showcase, yeah, so things did not go well for us on the last turn. But now we can kind of showcase some of the other things. So let's just pretend that I wanted to scout, let's say this hex right here. So this will be an air recon that I'm going to do just to show you what happens when you intercept. Yeah, this, let's say this hex, which will give me pretty good information about this road, this road, this road, and this airbase as well. So, they did not intercept us. Okay, that was a surprise. I thought that they would intercept from even a hex away. Maybe recon missions are special. Now that we see it, we can try, just to showcase how intercepting works, we can use this unit to actually dive bomb that airfield. And this is going to be an interception. Okay, so the flak is also helping us, the Germans that is, from 2 hexes away. We can see that all of our units were forced to pull back, and they're pretty low on readiness now. See, the flak, which was in this hex from the HQ, also, I think the flak helps out from 2 hexes away. It at least helps out from a hex away. So all those things really just demolished my dive bombers. They actually have 30 action points left because they fled the field so quickly. Maybe we can get in another dive bombing run then. But you see that now these units are still intercepting us, and we retreated pretty much. That probably took away our ability to do any kind of damage. You can see our defender was just not, was left completely unchanged, whereas the interceptors again did a little bit more readiness damage to us. Now, although they did their their recon, they still have a few points left. Let's just follow up and see what happens when we do one more. This is out of range. Okay, so they only have 30 action points, which means they can only go 3 hexes. So the best we can do is attack this unit. Very good. So what happens is usually if you have an interceptor screen, you can get the interceptor screen to trigger on one group, send in your fighters, get them below their readiness that they need to be at, and then you can send in another wave. So the best way of doing it is to send your fighters on to some mission around to allow them to get intercepted. Then send your level bombers afterwards after the fighter screen has already been cleared. Okay, well, I hope that helped you with air missions. So I'm going to wrap this episode up here. In the next video, we'll just do there's going to be still 2 more videos, because very briefly next turn I just want to cover research. That will probably only be a 5 or 10 minute video. Then after that I will quit out of this scenario and we'll move on to optimum unit design, but specifically we'll talk about table of organization and equipment, the TOE, which is really important. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.